Today on the Blockchain Report, Bitcoin slipped back down to 107K, and it might have something to do with the headlines. As the US and China finally strike a trade deal, but Bitcoin's barely flinched because apparently world peace isn't as bullish as good old-fashioned crises. And President Donald Trump says he has no idea who CZ is right after pardoning him? Well, that's like paying someone's bail and then asking, wait a second, why is this guy on my jet? And George R.R. Martin still isn't writing the next Game of Thrones book. He's suing OpenAI for stealing it. So winter's not coming, but depositions certainly are. All that and more on today's show. Let's roll! Good morning, my digital darlings, and welcome back to another episode of the Blockchain Report. I'm Hank Hudson, coming to you live from San Francisco, California. It is somehow November already, that special time of year when your portfolio's colder than this cycle's alt season, and everyone suddenly pretends to care about tax loss harvesting. Love that. Now, before we dive into today's mix of political spin and Bitcoin drama, let's do the thing. Hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to follow RoxomTV, the Blockchain Report, and me at Hank at RoxomTV on whatever platform you're currently using to hide from reality. And all right, gang, it is Monday, so let's see how Bitcoin is doing this morning as we enter this first week of November in our market rundown. Let's go. All right, it is November 3rd. We got 2 months left in Q4. The Bitcoin price, right now, it's not doing us many favors. We're currently around that 107 mark. Remember, just about 3 weeks ago, we saw that flash crash down from 124 to 102. And ever since, we've been kind of hovering around the doldrums of 110 to 106, gone up to 115 recently. Currently, we're at 107, down about 2.5% in the last 24. But we got a lot of big news this week, so I got a feeling things are going to be picking up and relatively fast. And what I'd like to do this morning is get into our Bitcoin Alpha segment. This is where we ditch the noise and look at the actual on-chain data to figure out what's really going on beneath the headlines here. But remember, this is not financial advice. This is just a humble man with a chart addiction and a new digital marker that's about to ruin this screen. So let's get excited for that and bring up our first charts here, guys. All right? Okay, so this is going to be fun. I've got my telestrator here, and we're going to see how this works in real time. I don't know. This could be great. It could be a disaster. Let's find out how it works. All right, so what we're bringing up here first, gang, this first chart I got this morning, this is the Mayer multiple, okay? And what it really tells us is how far Bitcoin's price has drifted above or below its long-term trend lines, okay? So basically, what that means is when we're way up here above this red line you can see here, and look at me, I'm drawing on it, the future is now. So when we're above that red line, that's your classic grandma's buying the top zone, okay? You don't like that spot. But when we dip below the blue line, we can see down below here it is, there's the blue line, all right? That's your no one wants Bitcoin perfect time to buy zone, all right? And if I draw this, so I can draw right here, you can see we've been kind of coiling between this blue and orange line here, and you can see it also reflected here. Look at the coil, a lot of coil, we're staying right in between these lines, and you can see we've been bouncing inside this channel pretty much all bull market. And here's the key part right now. Bitcoin's hovering just above that 200-day moving average line, which again is the blue line here. That's a reset, okay? That's not a rug pull. We're not even close to those overheated cycle top levels from 2017, 2021, or even mid-2024 yet. So this is looking more like a breather before another move up, not the start of a bear market funeral, okay? The 200-day moving average is sitting right around that 109,900 mark, by the way, and that is the line that we are going to want to be watching, all right? So we're bringing up chart number 2 now. All right, so this next chart here looks a little chaotic, but it's actually one of the best ways to gauge the market emotion. remove the drawings. And I got to remove the drawings here. Thank you for the reminder here, guys. It's a new thing here, all right? So this chart here is called the NUPLZ, which stands for the net unrealized profit loss. And it's kind of just a fancy way of saying how much paper profit is out there right now. Now, when the current chart glows red like this, you can see in 2017 and back in 2021, right? That's full euphoria, okay? Everyone thinks they're a genius, and we're usually weeks away from the top. I remember that area. I was one of those guys. I thought I was so smart, but I wasn't. Right now, though, you can see our zone is actually pretty quiet here because we had these big bands indicating a lot of interest here, a lot of profit. We're not seeing that here. Very, very quiet. There's no euphoria. There's no mass excitement. That's not what cycle tops look like. In fact, long-term holders now are sitting pretty steady. Short-term traders are getting a little tired, and this is suggesting we haven't seen the real mania phase of this cycle just yet. So if you're waiting for fireworks, they haven't even started the countdown yet, so cool your jets. All right, so the last chart we're going to bring up here is actually pretty simple, but it's as simple as it is, it's also very powerful. It's the ETF inflows and outflows chart, okay? And let me get rid of my markings here. There we go. All right, so this is kind of the Wall Street money meter we're looking at here. Each green bar means that fresh money is flowing into Bitcoin. So you can see right here, this is a lot of money coming into the space. The red, though, means the money is going bye-bye. So that's, we can wave there. I wish I had like a little hand. That means bye-bye money. That's what those red ones are meaning. Last week, what did we see? Well, we closed with 3 straight red days that you can see right here. That's totaling nearly $800 million worth of outflows and over $2 billion in just the past 2 weeks. Okay, so a lot of outflows here. That's like $2 billion worth in just the last 2 weeks. And what that tells you is that there's definitely some fear creeping in the market. But here's where I'd like to draw a box around these red bars here. Because this kind of capitulation that we've been seeing right over here, right? This is from ETF investors, and it often lines up with local bottoms. All right, so retail is panicking, but institutions are lurking in the shadows. Now, have we seen this story before? Yes, we have. Despite the sell pressure, Bitcoin's still holding above the 100K line to start November. All right, so what does that usually mean? Well, historically, that has been one of Bitcoin's most bullish months, November. We love November. So yeah, short-term fear, definitely there. Long-term trend, though, is still very much intact. So what's the wrap-up, or what's the big read of today's charts, right? Well, what's that, Victor? Clear, yes. So what's the big read? Let's just go to camera 1 and go on to me, guys. Yeah, on B-side. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, retail confidence right now is fading. ETF investors are getting a little spooked. Long-term holders are taking some profits. Yet Bitcoin refuses to break right now. We're still above that 100K mark. The market is looking a little shaky, but under the hood, the fundamentals are still leaning bullish. Think of this as a reset before the next run, not the end of the road. And if history is any guide here, November tends to reward the patient ones. All right, we're taking a quick break, but when we're back, we got a lot going on today. We got our top news. We're going to be joined by our own fortune teller, market reader extraordinaire, Mr. Big Beat Stephen Orr will be joining us. He has been an absolute role lately, predicting the markets as they happen. And we're going to have another special guest coming up in just a little bit, so stay tuned. More Blockchain Report coming your way right after this break. All right, welcome back. It's time for this morning's Bull Runner. We go over the top stories of the day, so let's get into it. We've got a lot to talk about. First up, Strategy, you know them, the company that turned buy Bitcoin and chill into a Fortune 500 business model, made $2.8 billion in the third quarter, and the market's treating it like they underperformed because it's down from last quarter's record $10 billion haul. And just this morning, they announced an additional purchase of 397 more Bitcoin, which means they now hold over 641,000 BTC. They're predicting, in fact, that Bitcoin will hit 150K this year, and their yearly profit lands around 24 billion, which would make them one of the few companies on Earth where the financial plan literally reads, do nothing and wait for a number go up. In the most recent earnings call, Saylor says he wants MSTR to stand for Monster. Let's take a look.
We want to be the revolutionary company that discovered digital capital. that then went on to discover and found the digital credit market. And, when you're just rolling a bunch of 5 to 7 year bonds, and when you're opportunistic, then, you're careening toward the future with an advantage. I want MSTR to stand for monster. We want to create a monster company. We don't want to careen toward the future with an advantage. We don't want to be the talented fighter, that kind of wins and loses and mostly wins and is a little bit sloppy and undisciplined. We want to create the digital credit instruments that are 2 to 4 times better than everything in the $300 trillion market, and we want to eat the world.
So, yeah, it looks like Strategy made $2.8 billion. They got roasted for underperforming, and they still hold more Bitcoin than most governments. Oh, and they want to change the name to Monster. So not too bad for a company whose entire strategy is, in fact, in the name. And in what might be the most Trump thing ever said on television, President Donald Trump claimed that he has no idea who Changpeng Zhao is just weeks after pardoning him. Yeah, you heard that one right. The man pardoned the billionaire founder of Binance, the world's biggest crypto exchange, and then told 60 Minutes, quote, I don't know who he is. That's kind of like bailing someone out of jail and then saying, wait a second, why are you here in my Lexus with me? I don't know. Now, for context, CZ, as the crypto world calls him, pleaded guilty back in 2023 to enabling money laundering and served 4 months in prison. He stepped down as CEO of Binance and agreed to a massive settlement with the United States authorities. So, not exactly an obscure guy. And yet, here we are. Trump said he only heard that CZ was a victim of a witch hunt by the Biden administration, which, let's be honest, has become Trump's version of I didn't read the terms and conditions. Here's where it gets particularly interesting. CZ's companies have been linked to new digital currency projects tied to Trump's own business network, including Dominary Holdings, which is based at Trump Tower, where Trump's sons sit on the board of advisors. So, yeah, apparently he pardoned a man he doesn't know whose company partners with his son's crypto venture. Nothing to see here, gang. Totally normal, just to move along. And after months of political foreplay, the US and China finally finalized the TikTok deal. Hooray! Last week, it was announced that TikTok will be spun into a shiny new American company, mostly owned by Oracle and Silver Lake. ByteDance, the Chinese parent company, gets to hang around in the background like an ex who still wants to be friends, while Trump signed off after Xi Jinping gave the green light. Apparently, this happened during a trade peace talk in South Korea because nothing says geopolitical stability quite like saving the app that taught America to dance badly. The deal keeps TikTok running in the United States, satisfies national security hawks, and lets both sides pretend that they won. And the rest of us get to keep doom scrolling instead of reading the news about it. Meanwhile, TikTok's algorithm remains the world's most powerful propaganda machine for 20-second financial advice and, of course, thirst traps. And the United States and China announced a major trade detente, suspending some tariffs, easing export controls, and promising calmer trade winds. You'd think markets would throw a party after hearing this news, but Bitcoin barely blinked, trading around 110K at the time. That was up less than 1% in the last 24 hours. Currently, we're sitting between 107 and 108. But the ruse is like, why is there this collective shrug as a result of this news, right? Well, analysts say it's not structural, it's not sentimental. Or say it's structural, not sentimental. Long-term holders are moving coins into the market while patient institutional buyers are scooping them up. That means the folks who once hodled through shocks are handing inventory to traditional finance players who prefer quieter waters and bigger balances. So instead of fireworks, we got a handoff. The old guard selling into the new guard. Economists call this maturation. Traders call it quiet reallocation, and everyone else calls it markets behaving weirdly. The trade deal itself is big. China pauses new export controls on rare earths, curbs certain fentanyl imports, and halts some retaliatory tariffs. Washington eases tariffs by about 10% and extends exemptions through next November. Politically, it's being framed as a win for supply chains and manufacturers, but for Bitcoin, the headline mattered less than ownership the ownership shift that went on underneath. And meanwhile, Trump says Chinese President Xi Jinping gave him assurances that Beijing won't invade Taiwan during his term. That's a bold claim, mostly because Xi didn't say it publicly, and Trump is quoting a conversation that allegedly happened back in South Korea, which, for those of you keeping track, is not where Taiwan is. Now, to be fair, Trump might not be wrong. I mean, Xi probably wouldn't move on Taiwan right now, not because of Trump, but because China's economy is limping. Their property market is imploding, and their youth unemployment rate is roughly, please just don't ask us. Still, it's a fascinating bit of political theater. The U.S. officially practices strategic ambiguity, which is a fancy way of saying we'll totally defend Taiwan, unless, of course, we don't. Trump, being Trump, turned that into "you'll find out if it happens," which is the exact same thing he probably told his tax attorneys. And apparently the U.S. Defense Department is preparing for possible military action in Nigeria, citing violence against Christian communities. The comment came from Trump after he labeled Nigeria a country of particular concern and warned the Nigerian government to move fast. Online, he wrote that if Nigeria doesn't act, the U.S. may very well go into that now disgraced country guns a-blazing. That's not diplomacy, my friends. That's a threat with fireworks. Nigeria's government pushed back, saying the characterization didn't reflect the reality on the ground, and noting they're working with the U.S. on security issues. Humanitarian groups say the violence in Nigeria is complex, sometimes religiously motivated, sometimes rooted in local disputes over land, resources, and ethnic tensions. The U.S. move to prepare forces raises some very big questions. Military action on foreign soil risks escalation, regional instability, and long-term blowback. It also has immediate market consequences because geopolitical shocks change investor appetites overnight. This meeting has been upgraded by the host. Something happened on Zoom there. Sorry, guys. Now, defense stocks and Monday, guys. Defense stocks and safe haven assets usually get bid when conflicts look possible. Risk on assets can often wobble, and anything tied to global supply chains can wobble even harder. So that's exciting news to look forward to. And Peter Schiff's streak of being wrong about Bitcoin is so long that apparently it deserves its own blockchain. Cardano founder Charles Hoskinson decided to remind him that his entire prediction career is basically the financial equivalent of, come on, just trust me, bro. Hoskinson took to X and pointed out that Schiff's been wrong at literally every entry level. $100, $1,000, $10,000, and most recently, $100,000. Hoskinson said even if Bitcoin hit $1 million, Schiff would still find a way to be wrong. Apparently, the only thing more consistent than Bitcoin's halving cycle is Peter Schiff's bad takes. Schiff, of course, couldn't resist a comeback. He posted about how Bitcoin is not digital gold, noting that it's still 10% below my remote. Is just on an absolute tear this morning. There we go. He noted that Schiff posted about how Bitcoin is not digital gold, noting that it's still 10% below its all-time high, while gold and the NASDAQ are closer to theirs. He says buying Bitcoin is a bet against gold, as if both can't exist in the same solar system for some reason. He calls Bitcoin speculative. Meanwhile, he spent over a decade speculating that Bitcoin would in fact die. The irony here kind of writes itself. Hoskinson wasn't just mocking, he was making a point. You see, in 2025, Bitcoin's been recognized by governments, adopted by institutions, and even celebrated by Michael Saylor as a legitimate treasury asset. France is proposing a national Bitcoin reserve. The U.S. has acknowledged Bitcoin in policy, and Schiff's still stuck in 2013 arguing about tulips. All right, we're taking a break. I gotta get this remote fixed, but we'll be right back as we're gonna be joined by one of our favorite guests, is Mr. Big Beat himself. Stephen Orr will be joining us to help us read the tea leaves and tell us where he thinks Bitcoin's head next. Stay tuned for all that and more right here in the Blockchain Report when we return.
Matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising. The dollar's falling. That's the trick. Monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
All right, we're back, and I think my remote's fixed. So let's get back into it, shall we? We're talking about NVIDIA. You know them. They're now a $5 trillion company as the stock recently jumped 3% thanks to the U.S. approval of a chip sale to the UAE under a Microsoft deal. Now, the company's up 50% just this year, adding $1.6 trillion in value, and is responsible for nearly 1/5 of the S&P 500's total 2025 gains. That's right, NVIDIA is now basically carrying the U.S. economy on one GPU. Of the 80 analysts covering the company, 90% call it a buy, and only one analyst has the courage or death wish to call it a sell. That guy's name is Jay Goldberg, and somewhere, Jensen's AI is probably already generating a LinkedIn post about replacing him. Still, a few analysts are whispering the unthinkable, that maybe, just maybe, the laws of math still apply. One analyst says that NVIDIA's 90% market share will likely shrink. In turn, profit margins will fall, and competition from AMD and China's homegrown chips could end up biting. We'll see. And apparently, OpenAI, the same company that gave us ChatGPT, is now setting its sights on a $1 trillion IPO. Reports say the company could go public as early as 2026, depending on how long it takes Sam Altman to convince investors that his chatbot deserves a valuation roughly the size of Apple and Saudi Arabia combined. Now, timing here is kind of interesting because OpenAI reportedly lost $11.5 billion last quarter. They're burning through money faster than an NBA player after retirement. I mean, their CFO, Sarah Fryer, has apparently told people the IPO might not happen now until 2027. But some advisors say it could happen sooner, which makes sense when you're hemorrhaging that much cash. Sooner starts to sound like a survival strategy. One reason for the IPO is to reduce their dependency on Microsoft, which currently owns 27% of OpenAI. So if you've ever wondered what a modern corporate hostage situation looks like, it's this. The irony here is that OpenAI's entire business is about making humans obsolete, yet they need trillions in human money to keep it going. But look, if they pull this off, OpenAI will be the first company in history to make $1 trillion off of autocomplete. That, my friends, is not a business model. That is sorcery. Speaking of OpenAI, meanwhile, they are also being sued for trademark infringement by, wait for it, Cameo. Yeah, you know them. The company famous for letting you pay washed-up celebrities to say happy birthday is now mad that OpenAI used the same word. Apparently, Sora's new video feature lets users make AI-generated clips called cameos. Cameo, the human one, says that's their word and that OpenAI is blatantly disregarding the obvious confusion. Because when people think of Cameo, they definitely think of Jake Paul pretending to be himself for $50. The lawsuit claims that OpenAI's feature could trick people into thinking they're using the real celebrity platform instead of, the robot version. OpenAI disagrees, saying no one owns the word Cameo, which is fair, otherwise we'd all owe royalties every time someone briefly appeared in a Marvel movie. Now, Cameo's CEO says they tried to work things out amicably, which is legalese for we sent an email, didn't get a reply, and now we're really upset. The irony here? Cameo's whole business model is paying people to say whatever you want, and now they're mad that AI can do it for free. Welcome to the future here, gang, where copyright lawsuits are the only thing humans still outperform AI at. We're taking a break, but when we're back, we got our special guest, Mr. Big Beat himself, Stephen Orr, joining us to help us make sense of the markets and help us forecast where he thinks Bitcoin is heading next as we enter the end of 2025. Stay tuned, all that and more, coming right back after this. right, welcome back. It's time for Market Check with Mr. Big Beat himself, Stephen Orr. Stephen, welcome back to the show. And you have been on a roll lately, and you've got a hat befitting of your abilities as our resident fortune teller. Tell us about where did you find this? We love it. I'm so here for it.
I mean, I got tired of people just saying, how the heck do you know all these things? How do you see the market so clearly? And I said, look, it's 35 years. It's not the hat or my crystal ball that's in my office. It's literally just this, right? It's paying attention to the markets. We nailed the 116 handle a few months ago. We hit the 126 handle, all the things that I've been saying. And I've been saying we're going to have a pullback, be prepared for it. And guess what? This morning we got exactly what I thought we would do, get that pullback, and here we are. And now I can take the hat off, the crystal ball can be put away, because I don't need all of that, right? I've got my charts, I've got my news, I understand the markets. And what was happening right now is we have a lot of institutional selling. That's fine. Enjoy that. And there are some people that are actually levering up and shorting again. Great. Fine. Enjoy. Because I'm going to take that money from them because now I'm loading up. But I have a new one that I'm not just loading up Bitcoin. Lately, I've been loading up Bitcoin over the last few days, especially on this dip. I just bought heavily down here. But Solana. I like Solana here, and I bet I bought it under that 170 handle. I thought that was where it was at because we've noticed in the past. Now, I'm going to share my screen if you can up here. I'll be seeing it up here. But in the charts, I'm going to pull up Bitcoin. I'm going to pull up a daily chart. And you'll notice that here and here and here, you see all these dips, these reverse candles here. Those were where the market tested. And right in here, the market dropped and then they bought right back up, right? It tested here and bought right back up. Tested, couldn't do it and brought it back up. What you're seeing is consolidation. You're seeing an area right in here between, look here, 111, 112, all the way down to about 103. So this is where the consolidation is in a lot of ways. And what's in the middle of that? Where we're at right now. And that's exactly what's happening. They are consolidating and they're trying to find a direction, and they will soon. The thing that I'm liking is, look at this, higher bottoms. I'm liking that a lot. If I take that line and I pull it up here and I start here and I lay it out right there, what do I see? Higher bottoms. Yes, I see it. Yeah, I get it that there are a couple of lines in here, but right there's what I'm seeing. They can't beat through that. They're having trouble, and in order to do that, they got to lever up. They got 100x, 300x to get through it, and they're having a tough time because there are a lot of buyers still out there, the monsters of the world. So what we're seeing now, I bought that dip for one reason, because now I think the consolidation is starting to end a little bit. I was asked at the beginning of October, is this Uptober? And I said no. I said, unfortunately, it's not, because there's a lot of tax selling coming in. There's a lot of problems geopolitical. We've talked about this on the show here, Hank, with you, and we're seeing it playing out in real time, including the government shutdown. And yes, that really is affecting people, right? So when I look at the overall picture of crypto, I need to find a better place. And so I found it, and Solana is it. You see this big drop? We just talked about the other drops. There it is right there. This is the daily chart. And I want to pull up a 3-hour chart. Why a 3-hour chart? That's what Wall Street loves, and we know that Wall Street's involved. They've broken below some of these lines. They've broken some of the technicals, which is okay by me a little bit. But this also means that they're setting up. Again, look at that stress in the last 3 hours ago, right? It was a big test at the bottom, and that's where it was. So I bought down there. I bought at 165.50, and we're now at 169.11. So I guess the question begs to ask is, what's next, right? So everyone wants to know what's next big beat. What's next? Look, the super trend is still to the downside. I know that. I get it. But when you look at the overall crypto's picture right now, to me, it's starting to set up to the upside. Here we go again. Let me draw these lines. If I ignore the last line of the last couple of days, it's still to the upside. So I'm going to ignore it, probably my own edification, but I'm going to show you something else. So I don't usually do the fib fans very often. But this is what we're seeing, right? So this is over the last few days and the last 3 hours. And we see where the selling pressure has been. And we can see here, they're filling those fib lines out very nicely. And that's the end of it. So we know that if this was the buy signal back in September the 11th, then I know. So there's your 926, there's your 901. See what I'm saying? First of the month, near the end of the month, in the middle of the month. There it is. So right now, I'm looking at this as a massive buying opportunity on Solana. I'm going to split it out just a little bit to say, where are we going with this? So you see them fall in the lines. It's literally curving the line. It's like almost like verbatim, right? You saw the line here curving. You see the line here curving. Even look at this line all the way to the upside, but now it's pulling to the downside. All right, I get that. I understand what people are saying. Oh, that it's a scary time out there. It is, but you know what? It's been a scary time. I'm gonna pull up the daily chart on the same lines and show you what I'm seeing. All right, I'm gonna tighten it up just a bit so everybody can understand what I'm thinking. There we go. This is what I'm seeing. So I think if we extend this line out just a little bit, there's what you're seeing. I think we go back to somewhere in January, February, and all the way to April, back to the 260, 270 handle if we don't have some big runs. And you can see that MACD is setting up. You can see RSI is setting up. And of course, my favorite Woody's, which is CCI. That's one of my favorites too as well. So for those of people that are short the market because they quote know something, good luck with that, because they're going to know something very soon. They're going to be out of money. And what I'm looking at too is where was the perfect buy opportunity. So I think I found that Bitcoin on the same situation. We've seen this line here again. Will it match? Is there going to be an altcoin season? I keep hearing that question. Look, the question about altcoin season is always the same, right? Tell me when all this selling is done, and then I'll tell you when altcoin season starts. I'm not looking at altcoin season as the next level of this, but if you're thinking about altcoin, then think about the big boss man, and that's Solana, and that's where I'm at. So that's what I'm thinking, Hank. I'm thinking that now that buying opportunity has now shared its beautiful head. I got my crystal ball. I've just put it away, and my Swami hat is no longer on my head because I don't need it. I see where this market's going.
So what is it about Solana right now that you are liking in particular, Big B? Because I know we've seen Solana range, I think from even like the low 100s this year, it's been as high as like 250, 260. You just see a lot of upside there as Bitcoin continues its ascent. We're just going to kind of see that move in tandem with it, just at maybe a slightly higher alpha right now. Because when Bitcoin was high, we saw like Solana like in the 250s at 170 right now. That certainly seems like a bit of a discount.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The same, you nailed it, right? It's a discount. If you liked it at 250, because there was some buyer there at 250, you're definitely liking it here, down here, right? You're liking a lot more here at 170. And if you made the mistake of not selling, which some people have been lately, because they're just the FOMO's hitting them too hard. Don't be that. Like I always say, Hank, be the ticker taker at this place stadium. Be the person taking the tickets when they're leaving the door, and be the person buying when they're walking out because they don't know what to do with it, right? They're scared. Don't be into FOMO. FOMO is going to get you in trouble, right? Pay attention, learn the markets, and understand it. Read your charts, and not just the charts that everybody else has. You see lots of other lines on my charts that nobody else has. That's how I'm going to get my insights. Now, if I'm looking at the next 3 to 4 months, and that's what you're thinking, then you're going to be fine on that 250 buy if you did it on Solana, right? It's going to take you a little time, and understandable. But if that's the case, then you should buy some down here and DCA, dollar cost average a little bit, right? Bring that entry point down a bit, and that's what I'm seeing right now. And quite frankly, look, we've also got another question to ask, right? And I don't like the fact that we do sometimes talk about the dollar, the Dixie itself, as fiat currency, because Bitcoin is its own currency. But at the same time, we are seeing a little bit of a pressure with the dollar. The dollar is pushing higher. We call it the Dixie in Wall Street. And the Dixie is getting to about 100. And I think we'll probably break the 100 handle fairly soon. It might be the end of it. I heard from Steve Flanagan, former head of JP Morgan's currency desk, Forex desk, saying 100.3, 100.22 is where he's thinking it's going to go to. It could get up to almost 102. That's where the next handle is. That would put pressure on Bitcoin and a lot of other fiats that as you're buying into it because your dollar's worth more, that gives you buying power. So if you are waiting on some buying power against Bitcoin, then this is it. If your fiat is in a dollar. Now, a lot of people have been asking me about silver. Has there been this pullback in silver? Is that affecting Bitcoin? And the answer is probably no, because it's a risk-on asset too, and so is Bitcoin. But we're not seeing that too. And quite frankly, I am seeing another research. If you look at the daily chart. We are setting up for another run in the silver market, especially if there's any geopolitical issues. So that could very well be, but that's where I'm also seeing it. And a lot of people have been asking me about the oil market. Why is oil a big deal? It's not crypto, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I understand that. But at the same time, that is where some money that has been starting to move into, especially into. And I'm gonna pull this up for everybody, is nat gas. I'm gonna pull a natural gas spot. I have been talking about the cold weather up in the north, right? That they expect this. So we are seeing some movement from retail money moving out of crypto into other speculative like futures of nat gas and silver and oil. So that has been putting a little bit of pressure on it. And guess what? That's also priced in dollars. So all of that has been having an effect on it. I'll stop my share here, Victor. But look, that's my thought process for right now. And look, I'm going long on Bitcoin. I'm going long on Solana. There's my two.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love it. And this week specifically, we should see a lot of news that is definitely going to impact the market. And one of the things I want to talk about right off the jump is the U.S. and China just struck what is being called a historic trade agreement to suspend tariffs and ease export restrictions. Yet the markets, including Bitcoin, haven't maybe reacted the way we thought. I would have figured we would have had some big upside as hearing these trade tensions are kind of dying down a little bit. Do you think that investors have grown a little numb to these breakthrough headlines, or was this trade deal just a little too late to move the needle? What are you thinking, Big B?
How many times has China banned Bitcoin? Do you trust anything coming out of the Chinese markets? Absolutely not. Oh, we have a deal with China. No, we don't.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a deal. Oh, no, 100% tariff. Oh, no, it's 20% tariffs. Oh, no, we'll give them NVIDIA chips. No, we won't. At this point, I think people are just numb to the headlines at this point. Get a trade deal done. Show me on the USTR website where that deal is done in paper, and then I think that would make people happier. But quite frankly, I'm waiting on the deal saying that in China, Xi Jinping himself is allowing people to buy and sell Bitcoin. If they start to do that, then that will lift the veil for me in a lot of ways, more than any other deal, because they've said they're going to ban Bitcoin so many times. I don't even know what Bitcoin is in China right now. So I don't forget about that, right? I mean, if you're basing your investment on whether or not Xi Jinping is going to eat lunch today, then that's on you, and you're a terrible trader. Just putting that to you right now. You think you know something going on in China? Yeah, you're full of it, right? Because you don't know, and we don't know either. I don't believe the China numbers. And you know, I do read the headlines, and algos are basing some of their movements on China. But I mean, I'm not betting my money on whether or not Xi Jinping and Li Hook, which is the finance minister, no. I'm betting on what I'm thinking about the markets and what I think people are looking at, and looking at the adoption of digital assets. I was just in Chicago over the weekend, and everything's touchless. Right, I was at Soldier Field where the Bears play. I went to go see Ireland rugby. We got beat, unfortunately, but everything's touchless. Right? When is it going to happen when you can use your Bitcoin to buy your beer and your hot dog? Very soon, right? And it's going to change. You can only do that now, right? So that's what I'm more interested in than whether or not China is going to allow people to buy Bitcoin and not buy Bitcoin, or what their new policy is, or any policy really. But it's also arrogant of us in the United States to also say that we are leading in crypto. We understand that this is a worldwide project. This is a worldwide currency. This is not just for the United States. And that's what I love about it. It brings in all the things I've been talking about, the geopolitical side of things, the question marks around it. So I enjoy the question about China. So I appreciate that, Hank. Thanks.
Yeah, no, and I got a question for you that just kind of came to my mind here, Big Beat. So with your platform, Quasar Markets, and for those that aren't aware, Big Beat and his team have this amazing platform that takes all the information and uses AI to aggregate it to give you a full picture of the market. But my question is for something like China, right? Something that we'd figure a trade agreement would really move the markets in a positive fashion. But to your point, you can't always believe what you hear out of the Chinese camp. How does your platform kind of distinguish between what we would think the sentiment would be and then what the reality is of the situation for something like China? Is it able to do that?
Absolutely. And I'm pulling it up now, actually. I want to share my screen here again. My man Victor up in the newsroom. Hey, buddy, look, it's very simple. You want to talk about China, you just click on the China. And our platform is in real time. You can look at it as if it's a Bloomberg headline or however you want to see it. And you can see all the China headlines. Right? Is China about to win the race in AI? I don't think so, right? U.S.-China escalation is here to stay, right? Those are not the same headlines that you and I were just talking about. And I get my stuff in real time. I get institutional news, and I also get Twitter news. I get quality news. There's their institutional news. I got it all here, including Saturn News, which is our news is more like what's out there everywhere around the world. And it's the same thing. If you ask about anything you want to know about, is as I write it in the real time, it pulls it up. There's all the Trump stuff coming up here. Trump administration. Trump suggests the stock market may fall. The Supreme Court throws out his tariffs. These are in real time, right? And I'm not wait until other firms to push out news. I want to know what's really going on. And so we were able to do that too as well. And then on top of that, I'm able to pull up all of that through the Quasar Markets news as well into our own AI, which is very cool. You can see as it's coming up here, and you can see what people are asking about right now. What's Elon's drug of choice? What's the GDP of India, right? And you ask about all those news things, a wire, right? So I want to know what trending is happening or news. So I want to put the news into it, and all of a sudden, there you go. These are all the questions that are being asked right now, but you just asked about China and crypto. What's going on? And I want to know because I want to know everything that's going on, and not just the latest news headlines. I really want to know the deep dark and tell me what's really happening out there. So this thing is deeper than just a ChatGPT question mark. It's telling me exactly what it's thinking. So it's putting together all of the news, in this case, all of our news together to give us a better, clearer picture of what's going on in China. And we'll pull it up when it comes up. But you can see here, what's the trend in Bitcoin? People are asking about Bitcoin again. And so it's another reason why I know. I'll tell you, whenever you see Google Trends, whenever you see the word, people start Googling Bitcoin or crypto, all of a sudden, there you go. So now we know, here's the question that we were asked. Recent developments in China regarding cryptocurrency highlight significant advancements in regulatory change. The CEO of Standard Chartered has emphasized the crucial role of Hong Kong's digital assets. There you go. Developments in China, a strategic approach to digital assets is leveraging Hong Kong's financial hub. These are questions I didn't even know. When we asked that question, all of a sudden I got better questions to a better answer. And one of them is, how do the central bank digital currencies differ from traditionals? How does China's stance on cryptocurrency regulation compare to other countries? All of a sudden, all I got to do is click the button. And these are questions that I did not know to ask that are being asked by others that are also being asked around the world. So that's what I'm saying. I want a better question to a better answer to give me a better question to a better answer to create a better profile for me to make a better decision when I am trading or making decisions about my place. It's not just always about what my charts say, because your charts don't say anything. It's how you interpret them, right? And it's also how sometimes the interpretation of psychology around the news also is a big question mark. And so if I can put all that together in one platform, and we did that right here at Quasar Markets.
Yeah, it's a really amazing product you guys have over there. And I want to turn our attention to the jobs market. We're expecting to see the latest employment reports come out this week after several softer readings. I know some of the numbers haven't been out recently because of the government shutdown, but it certainly seems like job growth is slowing, wage growth is cooling off. If we see another weak print, do you think that will that push the Fed toward rate cuts sooner, Big Beat, or do they still need to see some unemployment actually hurt before acting on some further rate cuts? Because Jerome Powell seemed a little more hawkish, I think, than people were hoping at his press conference last week, and that second rate cut this year doesn't seem like a foregone conclusion at this point.
That's exactly what he said, right? I can tell you that I have been watching Fed meetings for 35 years, and for the first time, I literally have no idea what Powell was saying. I will say politically that it was a shot across the bow to the president, saying, "Look, it's not a foregone conclusion. We are independent of the White House. You can pressure me all you want." We did see one member who was appointed by the president who wanted 50 basis points, and we saw one who was appointed by Obama who wanted nothing, right? No cuts, and probably wanted to raise them. But the rest of them said, yeah, let's go with 25 basis points here. But it's not a foregone conclusion because we are, quote, data dependent, or there's no data. So stop. Oh, he said, well, we have other data that we look at. Well, okay, I know what data you're looking at. It's old data. It's old news. You don't have, I'll give you a copy of Quasar Markets. Turn on RoxomTV. We'll help you out, right? I don't really understand. Look, as my friend JC Perez always says, I don't know what I'm having for breakfast, or much less what the Fed is going to do, right? The Fed is very independent, and they don't really care politically. I guess you can have problems with your house mortgage and still get away with it and still be a member of the Fed. So I'm going to be critical of this Fed, but not so much. They do have their thumb on the pulse of what people are saying, but they're not using the data that I think that they should be. Forward-looking data, right? When you look at, well, we're looking at jobs data. Well, AI is taking people's jobs. We see it from Amazon, Microsoft's telling you this, right? Meta is the hiring is going on in these areas. Something that I mentioned on my show this morning was, and this is interesting, in the past, Hank, Meta and these big firms like Microsoft would spend ginormous amounts of money buying the best employees from each other, right? So Meta would be like, okay, I'll give you more money, please stay. It was this we call job hugging, right? That's slowing down. Palantir over the weekend said something very interesting. The CEO said, we don't care about the college kids anymore. We're going after these smart kids in high school now. So if that's the case, they're skipping a whole generation of kids coming out of college going, we don't need you because you're not prepared. Your college professor is not an AI person. Your college professor is not teaching you digital currency. Your professor in school, so what are they doing? They're going to these kids who are learning about AI, but they didn't even grow up without the internet. They grew up with AI in their hands. So that's what Palantir is saying to you. And right now, Meta's going, hey, it's cheaper. Hey, Microsoft's saying, hey, it's cheaper to hire a high school kid than it is a college kid or a recent graduate, or somebody who's been at Meta or Facebook or at Microsoft or Amazon. So there's no poaching, proselytizing, as we call it. There's none of that going on anymore. They don't need to do that anymore. So yes. And I'll tell you, I've said this for almost over a year, Hank. If you as a person out there are not learning AI or don't understand how it can help you, or you don't have a Chat GPT, Anthropic, Gemini, or something on your phone, your mobile app, then you're missing out. You're not learning about the markets, and you're not going to be a part of this new generation of how we live. And digital currency is exactly how we are going to live. We're going to live in a world that your phone becomes your wallet. You're not even going. When I see wallets on Amazon for sale, I'm like, why? Right? Because we won't even need them in the future. It'll be your mobile phone, your finger, or whatever your app that you're using. In my case, a watch. And look, these are the things. This is the future. So when we invest, we don't invest for just tomorrow in the next 5 minutes before I have lunch. It's about the future. And the future is Bitcoin. And when you asked me about Solana, there was a dip buying opportunity for me. And I know where it's going. Meme coins aren't going to go away. I don't like them all, and that's okay. But Solana is still the gas for it, right? So why not buy the pickaxe and the shovels as opposed to just trying to find the right one? So I thought this was a good opportunity to buy Solana, and now I see Solana is up. So I'm very happy about that. We see that Bitcoin is that power move to the downside, but that got bought right back up. And we know that CZ is out of jail. So CZ is also he's back in the game, right? And so he's been buying Bitcoin. So when I look at all those things, I don't want to go against the grain here. There's no insider in crypto, right? There are whales. We know where the whales are. We know who they are. That's the best part about crypto is that you can't hide. You're on everybody's ledger. You can't hide, right? We know what's going to happen. We're going to figure it out. This isn't like the FBI and CIA trying to backtrack on someone's fiat and how they tornado the cash around the world. We know what happens. So good. And I'm not scared of those people that are the 100Xs and 300Xs, because why? They got to cover their short at some point anyway. So good. When they do, I'll be right there with them taking their money. So I'm thankful for that.
Oh, we know you are, but no one predicts the markets quite like you do, Big Beat. And we got access actually to a special little treat here we want to show our audience. It seems like you have been moonlighting on the side and giving out your services to those lucky few that are willing to come up to your booth. Can we bring that picture up here, guys? Really quick. There he is. He's giving out free advice. Was that at like the Chris Kindle Mart or something?
There was my wife and I went to Jack's Pumpkins patch in Chicago as a pop-up, and we absolutely had a blast. And I saw that, Hank, and I was like, "Oh, Captain, you've got to take a picture of me." I'll send it over to Hank because he's been calling me Zoltar for so long. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should have worn the Swami hat there too as well. But I love that. Thanks, I appreciate that. It gives me a good chuckle.
I love it too. We need a little image with you up in the corner of the Quasar Markets AI platform, so it's like you're talking to Zoltar, which is really just you predicting the markets, because you've been so unbelievably on point the last couple of months. It's really wild with how good your predictions have been. And, you know, we always got to say, I know our time is running short here. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us on the Blockchain Report today. We love that you're always sharing your insights and words of wisdom with us. And we're super excited every week we get to have you on the show. And for those in our audience that saw it earlier but want more information, where can they go to get more info and maybe even sign up with Quasar Markets if they want that inside scoop so they can compete with the big fish out there?
I mean, you just have to ask Zoltar. I think Zoltar has all the answers today. But it's quasarmarkets.com, or you can go to my own website, qmbigbeat.com, and I'm there, and I'll answer your questions. I got a few of them not too long ago from some of your watchers and listeners, so I appreciate that. But listen, you know, I have been saying this for many, many years, that the crypto world needs a professional place, that people watching shows, we see it all the time, and they finally have it right here with the RoxomTV and the Blockchain Report. And look, I love this. You guys are on point. You're bringing the right people to talk about the projects that are going on out there. And I don't think there's a better place to actually talk about Bitcoin. If you look at it from the perspective of the big players, you know, CNBC and Bloomberg and Yahoo Finance and all, they're not really giving you the better, bigger picture with the real players. It's more of a, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Right? And so this is why I like this much better. So I love RoxomTV. Big shout out to you guys. Big hearts. So thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, we love you, Big Beat. Thank you for coming on. I'll hopefully see you next week, bud. Enjoy the rest of your week, and thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Hank.
All right, cheers. All right, we're taking a quick break, but when we're back, more Blockchain Report on the way, including our second special guest of the day, and you are not going to want to miss this one, so stay tuned. We'll be back right after this quick message.
Matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick, monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index is collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Fuck. Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
All right, welcome back. It's time for more of this morning's bull run. And joining us for our bull run this morning is one of the sharpest voices in Bitcoin finance, a man who literally turned don't sell your Bitcoin into $1 billion business model. He's helping build the bridge between hodlers and traditional finance and doing it with the kind of conviction only a true Bitcoiner can have. Let's give a big blockchain report welcome back to the show to the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Ledn, Mauricio Bartolomeo, everybody. Mauricio, welcome back to the show. It is such a pleasure to have you back on. How have you been since we last seen you?
I've been great, man. That's probably one of the kindest introductions I've ever had. So thank you. Thank you for your kind words. I've been great, man. It's been a fantastic year so far. I mean, it's a blur. I've loved this ride. We've been doing this for 7 years, but this year in particular, we have seen just so much growth and so many of the things that towards for the last 7 years kind of materialize. And so it's been a real treat to be on this seat and to do what I do for this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels very reminiscent of what is that thing that Bezos always says? It's like you can be grinding for 4 or 5 years and nobody knows who you are, and then all of a sudden that flip switches and everything you've been working for, and you become one of the biggest things out there. And that seems to be what is happening in this space right now. So we're certainly excited to have you to talk shop today, and we're going to get into more about you and Ledn in just a bit. But before that, we're going to go over a couple of today's top news stories. So you ready to rock and roll?
Let's go.
All right, let's go. First one up, we got Strategy. They're back in the news, as we talked about earlier, announcing that they made $2.8 billion in the third quarter, and the market's treating it like they underperformed because it's down from last quarter's record $10 billion haul. And just this morning, they announced an additional purchase of nearly 400 Bitcoin, now giving them a grand total of over 641,000 BTC. They're predicting that Bitcoin's going to hit 150K and that their yearly profit will land somewhere around $24 billion. We're bringing Mauricio to chat about it. Mauricio, Strategy just reported $2.8 billion in profit for Q3, which by any normal standard is massive, but Wall Street's acted like they underperformed since last quarter's number was $10 billion. Do you think that this shows that Saylor's Bitcoin treasury strategy is becoming priced in, or has the market just gotten numb to these wild Bitcoin-driven earnings swings? What do you think?
No, not at all. I don't think this should be interpreted as any type of referendum on the model. I think the model still holds. I think if again, Strategy's earnings are quite unique compared to everyone else's earnings, because Strategy, as many people know, their operating business is just a small sliver of what they actually do, and what they're known for is they are a very sophisticated Bitcoin treasury company operation, right? And so when you look at Strategy's earnings, a lot of what you see there is the appreciation on their Bitcoin position, right? And because the move in Bitcoin price in Q3 was not as material as the move in Bitcoin price in Q2, that translates to a earnings number that is lackluster compared to what they had last quarter. But it doesn't mean they hold any less Bitcoin. It means that the Bitcoin they hold, they purchased, appreciated by less than than their stack appreciated it for in last quarter. It's still appreciated by a fair margin. And I think Strategy, the stock price of Strategy also has a lot of noise around it right now, not just Strategy, but all of the treasury companies, because treasury companies have come under quite a bit of pressure. And so what you're seeing, I think correlation is not always causation, right? Like if the price is down, you could be the greatest auto manufacturing company in the world, but if you put out blowout numbers the day that a country gets attacked, or the day that there's some geopolitical event, your stock's still going to go down. But that says little about your profits, more so about the market itself. So I think MicroStrategy's earnings are still stellar if you compare them to basically anything else out there. One of the major things they've done, which I think is, again, I pay a lot of attention to it because I'm in the Bitcoin financing world, but not everyone does, is this phenomenon of SDRC. So SDRC was their offering that came out. I believe it came out during Q3. And this is just you can think of it as a dollar fixed term deposit in some ways that pays you 10% yield. and they use that money to buy Bitcoin with it. That has been a fantastic offering for them. They issued that stock at $90 at par, basically. That stock is now trading at $100. So it's actually getting priced higher than he originally rolled it on the market, meaning it's a great deal for him because he can now offer it again at a higher base. Because he offered him at 90, now he could offer them at 99. So the model, everything I see by way of markers in the market is that the model for strategy is still holds very well, and they're still making money. Even what I would actually flip the earnings commentary upside down and say Michael still made $2.8 billion in a point in time where Bitcoin was mostly flat. So I actually think that this is a good thing for strategy. If you look around at the universe of other treasury companies, they're getting slaughtered, and none of them are putting up these types of numbers. So I think there is a view by some in the market that says there's a huge first mover advantage in this sector of Bitcoin treasury companies, and Michael has that squarely. He's holding that title squarely, and he's not letting it go. So I would actually be very curious, before I make any other comments on MicroStrategy, I would like to see how other treasury companies report, because now we have a bunch of them that would presumably be reporting now. And I believe this week we have a bunch of minor reports as well. I think Hut 8 reports this week. I think Marathon reports this week. So those will be very interesting to see. Mind you, different businesses, but I think you have to benchmark Bitcoin businesses to other Bitcoin businesses as well as to the industry itself.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. Comparatively, how is it doing compared to other Bitcoin treasury companies is a big thing here. And a big word is still, as opposed to only, right? A lot of people out here saying it only made 2.8 when it made 10 last quarter. And you're saying it actually still made 2.8, even though the market hasn't been particularly favorable, especially during the last month. So that's a really great way to look at it. In addition to these Q3 earnings reports, Strategy also announced they just bought another 397 Bitcoin, bringing their stash to over 641,000. That's roughly 3% of all Bitcoin that will ever exist. So my question for you, Mauricio, is at that scale, do you think that Strategy still moves the market when they buy? Or are we kind of at a point where their moves have become more of a symbolic show of conviction rather than an actual price catalyst the way we had seen previously?
It's a great question. So just like in physics, right? Like the bigger the rock, the more power you need to move the rock even an inch, right? And so Bitcoin is becoming a very heavy rock, right? Like it's very hard to move the needle on the price of Bitcoin when you have billions, if not trillions of dollars trading in and out every day. So the sort of quantum purchase power you need to move that needle becomes increasingly higher. So now, that said, I still think Michael is probably one of the biggest buyers in town today. So I think Michael's sort of announcements work as both a price catalyst and a sentiment buffer, right? Like in one way, now the other thing you don't see is that when Michael says he bought 397 Bitcoin, necessarily that means someone else sold 397 Bitcoin, right? So the fact that there's someone there to absorb that flow and keep the market steady is massive. Even if Michael says, if Michael this weekend, you see it this weekend. So what are we at right now? Bitcoin's trading, I believe, flat. It's flat from over the weekend, correct? I'm double checking, but I think we're actually down. We're actually down. We're at 106. We were the weekend. We went into the weekend at I think it was 107, what similar prices than what we are today. All I'm trying to say is if Michael hadn't bought 397 Bitcoin over the weekend, we would probably be much lower. And so Michael definitely moves the market or holds the market. That's the thing. Sometimes all he's doing is holding the price, but we don't give him credit for that because the market didn't rally it after his announcement. because we're not used to seeing flow coming in on the other side, right? Like, again, if you had said Michael bought $40 million worth of Bitcoin in 2020, okay, Bitcoin would be up 20%, right? Like, it would be at 30% because the market was much smaller back then. These types of size orders weren't around. And certainly there wasn't somebody just ready to sell 40 mil because there was just that idea of liquidity wasn't there. I think right now, which is frustrating a lot of people, right? There's this dynamic in the market that has a lot of people confused and frustrated at times, which is Michael's buying, El Salvador's buying, the US isn't selling, all of these big investors are coming in with allocations, all these treasury companies are coming out. Why is the price flat? Why isn't Bitcoin rallying higher if we have so many buyers? And there's been an interesting article making the rounds. I forget the name of who wrote it. I think it's VJ. I'll try to link it if we have a break. I'll try to link it to you. But basically, it talks about why this is happening in Bitcoin's IPO moment. And the IPO moment just means that in traditional finance, a company like Ledn, right, would raise venture money along the way to grow, right? And this money is raised from venture capitalists, investors that are looking to, help you build the business with the expectation that when your business grows, hits scale, and goes into the public markets, there will be public demand to buy ownership in your business. And once that demand exists, these investors will then be able to sell their interest in the business at a profit and then rinse and repeat and go help another emerging company down the line. The same holds true for Bitcoin in the sense that many people bought Bitcoin. Yes, they wanted financial freedom, but they also wanted their net wealth to grow along with it, right? They took a bet on this future of finance. They bet, say a couple $100,000 when they were in their late 20s, to call it 10 years ago. And now that $100,000 is now, $10 million or whatever, like a significant amount of life-changing money, right? Up until now, and I know that sounds like a number that rolls off the tongue, right? But like, if you invested $100,000 into something and you're staring at five or more $1 million, that is a phenomenal return to you, right? Previously, in the history of Bitcoin, if you went out and you tried to sell $2.5 million worth of Bitcoin, maybe not 2.5 is perhaps too small of a number, but let's say somebody that's in like the $5-10 million camp, you would have affected the price. In the same way you and I are talking about Michael Saylor at 40 mil, should we be worried that he's not moving the price? These were very real considerations especially for early Bitcoiners. Nobody wanted to be the person that went out and sold and said, oh my God, I tanked the market, right? Because I wanted to take profits. Right now, you are seeing a lot of these early investors, right? That, first of all, $100,000 is a very strong psychological marker, right? Like when Bitcoin hits $100,000, I think there's very few people out here that are talking about Bitcoin going to zero, right? Like we used to have conversations around, what if it goes to zero? Those conversations are now out the window. I can't remember the last person I had that asked me what happens if Bitcoin goes to zero. So this idea that it's crossed the chasm, right? Like we're no longer are we going back to zero. Bitcoin now stands on its own 2 feet. What I do, Bitcoin is bigger than me. It's bigger than all of us, right? Like me going out and selling these $10 million, it's not going to impact the market. I'm not doing damage to Bitcoin. I can now go sell my position and buy my house, right? Or another thing they're doing in size is they're coming to places like Ledn to borrow against their Bitcoin so they can finally go buy that house, start that business, take profits off the table, right? And right now, there's 2 things happening. Number one, there's a very strong institutional bid, meaning even if you do want to go out and sell 40 million, you'll likely have Saylor on the other side gobbling up those Bitcoins to go into his treasury. So you don't feel like you're damaging Bitcoin in the sense of, I'm basically giving it to someone else. I'm passing the baton, right? That's all you're doing is you're passing the baton from one holder to another, right? And so what's happening is a lot of these purchases by Saylor and others are being met with long-term investors that are not just ready to pass the baton. And they're saying, this is my time. They're probably, and I speak to a lot of Bitcoiners. Many people have this idea that Bitcoiners are all these like 20-year-old kids with hoodies or 20 like young people that are computer savvy and are sitting here, you would be shocked, Hank, at the persona, the average persona of Bitcoiners. Many of them are in their 40s or 50s or 60s. They're looking at retirement. They're having kids. Some even want to help their children. And so Bitcoiners are in this interesting juxtaposition where they've built a lot of money, right, over time. They're now in a stage of their lives where they're starting to have to think about, well, okay, let's say you're a Bitcoiner in your 40s, you've living in an apartment, you're married, your second kid is on the way, and what, you have just $10 million in self-custody and you live in a one-bedroom apartment, right? And so you're thinking to yourself, what's the point of all of this, right? Like, what am I going to take them to the grave? Why don't I? And then on the other side, you have your wife being like, "Baby, but I thought we were well off. I thought you bought Bitcoin." And you say, "No, yes, baby, I have it. I promise. We're doing very well." And she says, "But why are we still living in this apartment? Why can't I get someone to come help me while you're at work and I'm struggling with the baby? Like I thought you built all this wealth so that we could live better." And so the Bitcoiners are, for once, I think since the history of Bitcoin, you have a combination of things, which is Bitcoiners are in their later stages of their life, or not later stages, that sounds dramatic, but like they're moving along the stages of their lives. There's now ample liquidity in the market to sustain your sell. Like you can go out and sell 5 million and no one's going to turn around and go, "That was Billy, you sold that 5 million and you crucified us," right? Like Billy has cover, right, to go out and sell it. And then the third thing is, psychologically speaking, you have US government passing regulation on this. You have Bitcoin treasury companies popping up left, right, and center. The cat's out of the bag, right? So I think now they can safely say, I will hand over the baton. It is time for me to upgrade my life and for you to take on Bitcoin to this next stage. I held for 12 years. I'm still going to hold for the next 5, but I'm not going to do it with my entire net worth. I'm going to offload some of that risk so that I can translate that into a better life for me and my loved ones, and then I'll keep going, right? So again, I keep going back to this idea of rotation among holders, right? Like you cannot hold something forever. That is not the point, right? Like, I think if you play out this whole, self-custody only arc throughout, that's easy to say when you're 20. That's easy to say when you're 30. That's easy to say when you're 40. When you're 50 and you're 60 and you're holding to this thing and you're saying, well, how many years do I have left to actually enjoy these $10 million? Right? Like how many years do I have left to enjoy all my sacrifice during my 20s of having low time preference and not buying me that avocado toast? Right? Like there's, at some point you're going to at least try the avocado toast, right? Like that was the whole point of being able to do this, right? Like, sure, I'm not suggesting we all go buy Lambos, right? But if your wife's dream has been to go to France and have lunch in some restaurant and you're 50 and you're looking around and your friends are starting to have health issues, what are you going to do? Hold that thing forever or sell a little bit and say, baby, let's go to France? Like, it's a natural thing, I think.
It is. And you make some really interesting points here, Mauricio, specifically with, people had this idea that Bitcoiners were these young kids, like you said, in hoodies on their laptops, and they were. But Bitcoin's been around for 17 or whatever so years now, and you made a really interesting point that I can't say I've thought about. You have these early Bitcoiners who are now getting to different stages of their life. And like you said, you can't hold forever, right? Eventually you need to try the avocado toast, which means you got to sell that Bitcoin. But the difference is in this particular ecosystem we're in right now, there is buying pressure from institutions that have no plans of selling it, that are very interested in just taking it from you as that rotation goes from retail to now the institutional investors that we're seeing now. So it's just this whole different ecosystem. And also to your point with the Bitcoin buys, you said as this thing gets bigger, it takes more energy or more momentum to move the market. Just like we had Galaxy Digital dump 80,000 coins a couple of months ago, the market moved back $3,000 and recovered by the end of the weekend. So yeah, you're right. It's this whole new phase now, and it's really exciting. But you got to try avocado toast eventually, guys. If you haven't had it yet, you're missing out. Sell just a little bit. Buy some avocado toast. All right, we're moving on to the next story. So hang tight. Go ahead, please.
No, I'm saying what the point you highlighted about Galaxy is exactly what I mean about this rotation. This was one seller. One seller. That's a lot of avocado toast, Hank. That is a lot of so what, and that it embodies a lot of what I think we're seeing, right? Like you saw one early holder drop 80,000 coins. One early holder. How many treasury companies does that feed? That feeds a lot of treasury companies, right? And so this is what's happening is the early Bitcoiners are putting out the feed in the water, and these treasury companies are just coming and gobbling it all up. And then the net effect of this is a wash in terms of price, which is what's making a lot of people ask, well, who's selling, right? And it's almost like nobody in Bitcoin can sell. It's blasphemy for somebody to come out and say, I want to buy a house. It's unthinkable, right? And I think that's the cognitive dissonance you're seeing among parts of the community, which is, how would anyone be selling? I'm like, well, ask yourself, if you were 60 and you have 2 kids going to college and you still haven't moved homes in 10 years, would you be holding? Or would you be borrowing against it? Or would you be selling a little bit?
And luckily we have products like you and the team at Ledn offer that allow you to borrow against your Bitcoin so you never have to sell it. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, we got one more story to go over. So hang 10, Mauricio. We'll be back in just a second, because the U.S. and China announced a major trade detente this week, suspending some tariffs. They'll be easing export controls and promising calmer trade winds ahead. And Bitcoin, well, it barely blinked on this news. It was trading currently around 107, 106,000. It's down about 2.5% in the last 24 hours. It's pretty negligible considering the news, and you would expect a bit of an uptick after good news like that. So why the collective shrug in the market, you ask? Well, analysts are saying it's structural, it's not sentimental. You see, long-term holders are moving coins into the market, like Mauricio and I just talked about, while patient institutional buyers are just here scooping them up. That means the folks that once hodled through shocks are handing inventory to traditional finance players who prefer quieter waters and bigger balances. So instead of fireworks, we got a handoff. The old guard selling into the new guard, just like Mauricio was talking about. The trade deal itself is actually pretty big. So China will be pausing new export controls on rare earths, curbs certain fentanyl imports, and they'll be halting some retaliatory tariffs. So certainly some calmer waters ahead for those trade negotiations between the U.S. and China. So we're bringing Mauricio back. Mauricio, the U.S. and China announced what's being called a historic trade detente, suspending tariffs or easing export restrictions, even calming supply chains, and yet Bitcoin barely moved. Currently we're hovering around 106, 107. Is the reason we haven't seen Bitcoin move, is this just back to what we talked about, where it's just trading hands right now? So there's selling pressure, but there's equal amount of buying pressure just ready to scoop it up from institutions. Is that what's going on right now?
Yeah, pretty much. The short answer is yes, I would agree with that view. The longer, more nuanced answer around this tariff conversation is that I think the market has that the saying, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, right? Like you're not fooled again. Yeah. You catch on to things, right? And I think this is also true for tariffs, right? At the beginning of the Trump administration, you saw them come up with these massive sweeping tariff announcements. Market was reacting like crazy. It was down one day, up one day. Things were reacting to this. But then we also, after the first sweeping tariff announcement, they pared that back. Right, and this is classic art of the deal, right? Like if you read Trump or if you read sort of his mechanics, right? You start out with this outrageous position that makes everybody go wow. Then you pare back your position to like half of that, which is still insane, but people look at it and go, oh well, he's coming to his senses, right? He's rational, right? Like he's probably, but you still end halfway in the middle. So it's almost like the administration has this sort of shock and awe strategy where at the beginning it just hits you like a brick and you say, oh my God, I'm going to react. and then you react.
Yeah.
But then they say, and then you realize, whoa, the brick wasn't really a brick. It was a foam brick. I shouldn't have done that. I'll go back into the market and repair what I did. And so you're basically trying to come to grips with what's real and what isn't, and what's the actual impact of it. And I think by now, almost a year into the election, right? Like I think he's not been in power for a year, but I think the last election was November of 2024.
Yeah.
So I think we're basically almost coming up on
Yeah.
a year. And I think by now people are saying, well, sweeping tariff statement comes out on X because he read something he didn't like. And all of a sudden, the market's basically saying, well, I'm not going to react to this tariff because likely there's going to be some type of announcement in a few weeks. Then the announcement comes back and you say, well, I'm not going to react to the announcement because there's still some negotiations. Nothing might change at all. And so you're basically like you've learned to operate, or the investors have learned to not be so quick with their triggers with this tariff conversations, in particular these tariff conversations, right? Because it seems like they can just change winds, and at times they just land at nothing. Right? Like in many cases, you've seen a lot of these, big sweeping tariffs get paired back to, oh, well, no, it's actually pretty much the same as it was before we made this big kerfuffle, and nothing's really changed except you traded in and out, and all of a sudden you're out some trading fees, and your taxes got all whacked out because you reacted too fast. So I think this is the world saying, we're just going to wait and not trade this news. We're going to watch until we see what actually comes down, what ink hits what paper and what comes into reality. The other thing is, I think people are calling out this concept that the US and China can't really afford to get into this big nasty fight with each other, right? Like they're saying, no matter what happens here, and by the way, if you read between the administration's lines, over the weekend you had Trump come out, and I've seen Trump come out and say things like, don't worry, Xi and I are great. None of us want our countries to fight with each other. It's not worth it, blah, blah, blah. Then you had Scott Bessent over the weekend also say, no, we believe that's going to be a great deal coming out of China. So they're priming the market for these announcements. And I don't think there's anything... we shouldn't look too much into the fact that market isn't moving on the back of this news. I think the market, knows that there is no news until there's a final deal signed. The market stopped moving to these, stopped reacting to these. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. The market's now saying, do it, and then we'll adjust. But until you do it, we're not going to keep going in and out of these trades.
Yeah, no, I've been trying to coin this term, and maybe it'll catch on, and maybe it already exists, but I feel like Trump practices something that I'm calling bipolar politics. It's always one extreme or the other, see how people react, everybody freaks out, and then he scales it back, and then his next ask seems a lot more reasonable, comparable to whatever he asked or said the first time. And maybe it's working, I don't know. It's certainly causing a lot of unease for us in the United States as a whole, but is it effective? I guess only time will tell. But it's certainly not leaving me feel good in the short term about anything. It's always like, we're going to war. Just kidding. Taxes are going to go up 10% or whatever tariff. So it's a lot, but that's okay. All right, well, we got another story we're going to talk about, and you are just the person to chat with it about. So hang on, Mauricio. We're going to read this and bring you back because Bitcoin lender Ledn just passed a $1 billion in loan originations this year, proving that you don't sell your Bitcoin is officially a viable business model. They issued nearly $400 million in BTC-backed loans in the last quarter alone and hit $100 million in annual reoccurring revenue. That's what happens when hodlers realize they can borrow against their stack, of course, instead of having to panic sell it. Now, Ledn dropped Ether lending this year to go Bitcoin only, which is basically the financial version of cleaning up your diet and cutting out seed oils. With over $836 million in outstanding loans and healthy collateral ratios, Ledn's proving Bitcoin isn't just a store of value, it's becoming the world's collateral of choice. Is that bullish? Absolutely. This is what real adoption looks like. Building financial infrastructure around Bitcoin, not in spite of it. All right, bringing Mauricio back. Mauricio, Ledn just crossed $1 billion in Bitcoin-backed loans this year and hit $100 million in annual recurring revenue, which is a massive milestone. What do these numbers tell you about how far Bitcoin lending and really Bitcoin financial infrastructure has come in just a couple of years?
Thanks, Hank. It's a massive moment for us. Like I mentioned, or the echoing what you said about Jeff Bezos. You build for years. We've been building towards this moment for 7+ years. And to give you some context on the growth, we've done $1 billion worth of originations year to date in Bitcoin-backed loans. That is so two numbers to frame this into perspective. Q3 alone, this third quarter, we did $392 million in originations the last 3 months that closed on October 31st. On September 30th. That is for all of 2024. We did roughly around that same number, $400 million. So we did the entire volume of originations of 2024 in 3 months of this year so far. And what that tells me is that the genie's out of the bottle on this idea that borrowing against your Bitcoin just makes financial sense, right? The reason people keep coming back to these products is because these products work. And by work, I mean, if you took out a loan with Ledn and you've held it for the 7 years we've been in business, you likely saw your net worth increase by not having sold that Bitcoin. Mathematically, that's the case. If you look at the average appreciation of Bitcoin has had year over year versus our annual interest rate, mathematically, everyone that's used our products responsibly has done well. That's why Ledn is growing. It's growing because it works for people using the service. If I sat here and sold a product that people don't like or doesn't get you ahead, I wouldn't be selling much, right? The beautiful thing about our product is that if you design it right and you operate it in the right manner, it works. It effectively, it is not selling your Bitcoin is its own value proposition, right? Like all I'm doing is articulating it and keeping that Bitcoin safe and putting it in a compliant framework that you can access and interact with, right? But the basic principle is Bitcoin is appreciating by much higher than the interest rate you're paying. And also you get tax benefits from not selling the Bitcoin. So by taking a Bitcoin-backed loan, you don't trigger a taxable event because in most places borrowing against your Bitcoin is not considered selling your Bitcoin. So you don't have to pay a tax on that sale. You don't have to compare it to your cost basis because you're not getting rid of it. And then on top of that, the interest rate that we charge, right now the interest rate is 12.4%, is much lower than the rate of appreciation in Bitcoin price over the last few years. And on top of that, if you are a business in the US and you take a loan from Ledn, you can write off the interest expense from our loan against your other income. So what we have done is we have packaged a product that is the United States market, or US in general, everyone is, but the US is more intimately, they know this product very well because of their mortgages, because of their car leases, because they basically are used to borrowing against basically anything they own, their stocks, their cars, their houses. Americans know that if you use that responsibly, it's a great tool to build wealth, right? And I think what we've done is we've brought this exact same activity into a much better asset. And so Americans who are now used to borrowing against everything they own, they now see Bitcoin and they go and take a loan against their Bitcoin and they see it's a lot faster than taking a mortgage. It's a lot less intrusive than taking a mortgage, and it can be done 24/7. It's really groundbreaking. Anyone that's gone and tried to get a mortgage or a car lease and compare that to the process of getting a Bitcoin-backed loan will tell you getting a Bitcoin-backed loan is it's like night and day, right? Like when you get a Bitcoin-backed loan, you're out in 2 minutes. I've seen, there's tweets from our clients here and there. They say, I went into Ledn this morning. I have the money in my bank account. It's 2 p.m. Right? And again, if you don't have to come to the branch, you don't have to come see us. We don't ask you for your income. We don't ask you for your credit score. It's a completely different experience. And not only can Americans access this, who are intimately familiar with borrowing against your assets, I can underwrite the same way in the same terms to everyone in the world because a Bitcoin in Argentina is the same as a Bitcoin in Argelia. It's the same as a Bitcoin in Alabama, right? Like Bitcoin is Bitcoin. All I need to care about is that you're a compliant person in a jurisdiction that I can service. Therefore, and if those two things are met, in a few minutes, you're off with your money. And that is revolutionary in too many ways, right? Like before Bitcoin, there was not a single asset that a person in Colombia could pledge to a lender in North America to take a loan, because the lender in North America didn't know how to deal with a house in Colombia, didn't know how to deal with gold in a vault in Colombia. But now you don't have to. Now his Bitcoin is the same as my Bitcoin and your Bitcoin. And so I can underwrite the credit in the same way without taking any more risk. So for me as a lender, it gives me great advantages. It's easy to liquidate, and I can underwrite risk in a uniform way. For the people on the other side who are the borrowers, it gives them access to fair capital on equal terms 24/7. So to both people, it's better for both the lender and the borrower. And this is why it's a business that's booming. And I think it's going to only continue to boom as more competitive pressures on the dollar side of the equation bring the rates down for our loans. And when that happens, more and more people will be able to take loans. There will be more reasons for you to take a loan when the rates you have to hurdle, or where the rate you have to come over is, the cost of that money right now is 12-ish. If the cost of that money comes down to 9, comes down to 8, the number of things you can do with that money grows exponentially. And I think I don't sell loans. I sell what you do with the loans. I sell you the ability to buy the ability to buy a house with a second bedroom without selling your Bitcoin. I sell the ability to start a business without selling your Bitcoin. I sell that new car you wanted without selling your Bitcoin. Those are all things that are going to get only better if the cost of those things, or the cost of financing, drops.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really wonderful product, especially that allows people to do all these other things with their money while still protecting their Bitcoin and never having to sell a Satoshi. It's really a win-win for both sides, especially as we can see the Bitcoin price continue up and to the right, as it has pretty much since forever. And with that in mind, we want to play a quick game with you here, Mauricio, that we didn't get a chance to play with you last time, but we play it with all of our favorite guests. Let's go to camera 3 here, gang. So as you know, this has been a very interesting year for Bitcoin, the institutional adoption, the treasury company narrative. So what we decided to do was take all of our guests and have them give us their end of the year price prediction for what they think Bitcoin will be December 31st. The clock strikes midnight. Where is Bitcoin going to be? Is it going to turn into a pumpkin, or are we going to see more stuff as we go into 2026? So right now, you can see it's quite the range. The highest bid we have right now is Knut Svanholm, around 443,000 by the end of this year. Just like I told him when he told me that, if that happens, I'm picking you both up in my new submarine, and we're going to go for a ride. But then we also have the more conservative bets. We have Grant Cardone, I think, was around 130s. I'm at 142. And the winner of this, we're going to send a personalized Roxom Patagonia to at the end of this year. So it's something worth getting excited about. So for fun and games, if you just had to guess based on your temperature that you're getting in the ecosystem right now, where do you think Bitcoin will be the end of this year, and why?
Joe, is that Joe at 160 or 150?
Joe Burnett, I think we had at 150.
Okay, yeah.
150.
So my running thinking is 150. I think just to keep the game more interesting, I'm gonna go with 148.9.
148.9. Okay. So what do you think? Do you think that we're going to see a bit of a run up here the last 2 months? It certainly sounds like it. Is there going to be a catalyst, or is this just Q4 rebalancing and hopium as we get into the holiday season?
No, I think my view on this, obviously a lot of these numbers and a lot of these predictions sound a bit out there, because we always think of them in the current market context that we're in, right? Like if you had said 150 a month ago, you would have been like, oh, you're undershooting it, right? But now saying 150, when we're sitting at 106, November 3rd, you're saying, oh my God, how do we get there, right? I think for me, I try to keep a long-term view. I think there's a lot of gunpowder under Bitcoin right now because of the relative values between gold and Bitcoin. So I think if and when a lot of these old school baton handers that we discussed earlier in the show, eventually the batons will have been handed out. Eventually the houses will have been purchased. And so from there on out, you're sitting on a new wave of demand. I think the Clarity Act, which is another act that's making its way through the Senate right now, if and when that comes, that unlocks a world of new capital. And so these are some of the things that some people aren't necessarily cognizant of that they could or could not be coming. Right now, the US government's shut down, but I'm optimistic that just with if one or two things that are on down the pipe come into fruition before the end of the year, I think we can see Bitcoin clear 125, 140 between now and year end. And that'll just be it catching up to gold, which has gone absolutely bananas this year. And we haven't seen the same in Bitcoin yet. So I don't think gold catches up by gold moving down. I think Bitcoin catches up by moving up. And I expect to see that sometime be for year end or Q1.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think, like you said, there's a lot of gunpowder there. We're just kind of sorting through some of the macro noise right now. But if we get some good news, maybe the government shutdown ends, that would be great. Maybe we get a little clarity on what's actually going on with the U.S.-China tariffs, and we could very well be on our way to that number before year's end. Now, we're running short on time here, Mauricio, but before we let you go, you said some really amazing and interesting things about you and the team in Ledn are working on right now. And I'm sure you have gained a couple of new fans, at least in our audience this morning, that are like, hey, I want to see how I can get loans against my Bitcoin so I don't ever have to sell it. What's the best place that we can send them so they can get more information on you and the team at Ledn and what solutions you guys might have for them in their Bitcoin?
Definitely. Ledn.io is the best place to go. That is, you can register an account. You could submit questions on the little support widget at the bottom right of the screen. You can also reach out to us on social media. We are at Hodl with Ledn. And my personal X or Twitter is at Cryptonomist with an A at the end, Cryptonomista. My DMs are open, so are Ledn's. Feel free to reach out to us any which way you want, and we'll be happy to take care of you.
Amazing. Well, Mauricio, it's always an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights and expertise with us today. And you, my friend, have earned yourself some avocado toast this morning. So make sure to treat yourself and maybe just sell a Satoshi or two or take a small loan out against it and then buy it, whatever works best. But we really appreciate having you on, and thanks for your time today. It's been fun.
Thanks, Hank. Had a blast.
Cheers. All right, we're taking a quick break, but when we're back, we're going to wrap things up a little bullish, bearish, or BS and see how things are looking for Bitcoin as we enter the last 2 months of the year. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Others, Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising. The dollar's falling. That's the trick. Monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index is collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Are you interested in effortlessly growing your Bitcoin portfolio? Of course you are. I mean, I sure am. And the Bitcoin credit card by Gemini earns you Bitcoin back on every purchase. Use it like any credit card. You can buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries. And you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. All that with no annual fee. And right now, you can grab a $200 Bitcoin welcome bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stack. Just go to Gemini.com to learn more. All right, it's time for some more of today's top news. Let's get into it. Next up, we have the activist ice cream wars are back as Ben Cohen, the co-founder of Ben & Jerry's, says Unilever, the brand's corporate parent, blocked him from launching a Palestine-themed ice cream flavor. So now he's going solo. Cohen said he's creating a watermelon-flavored sorbet under his personal brand, Ben's Best, to promote permanent peace in Palestine. Because when the world says diplomacy, Ben hears dessert. Now, the watermelon flavor isn't exactly random. Its red, green, black, and white colors match the Palestinian flag, and it's become a symbol of solidarity and pro-Palestine activism. So yeah, it's basically a frozen protest. Unilever, which also owns Magnum, says now is not the right time to develop the product, or in other words, please, for the love of shareholders, not another controversy. Now, the feud isn't exactly new. In 2021, Ben & Jerry's refused to sell in Israeli-occupied territories, prompting Unilever to sell that part of the business to a local licensee. That move split the company and its fans right down the middle like a melted pint of half-baked. Cohen also promised more flavors to come, each tackling social causes Ben & Jerry's has been silenced from addressing. Past examples include Bernie's Back, his 2016 flavor supporting Bernie Sanders. So yeah, the frozen dessert aisle has officially entered foreign policy. Hooray. All right, it's time for Tales from Hollywood. Let's roll the stinger and get into it. All right, it's time for some Tales from Hollywood. Let's see what's going on over in Hollyweird. Well, it looks like George R.R. Martin, the Games of Thrones author, and a group of writers are now suing OpenAI. Recently, a federal judge advanced two new theories of copyright infringement against the Sam Altman-led company, giving the authors multiple ways to win in court. Now, for those of you keeping score at home, that's one for the humans. The authors argue that OpenAI trained its large language models on copyrighted books, including theirs, without permission, and that the company illegally downloaded books. The judge ruled that these two acts, downloading and training, can be treated as separate copyright violations. That means even if OpenAI somehow beats one claim, the authors can still win the other. The court emphasized it's not yet ruling on fair use yet, but that doesn't matter. The momentum's clearly shifted toward the authors. Now, for the tech world, this is a massive precedent. If AI companies can't freely train on copyrighted material, the cost of intelligence just skyrocketed. So good luck with that. We're taking a quick break, but when we're back, we're wrapping things up with a little bullish, bearish, or BS, so stay tuned. Wish you could grab cash without selling your Bitcoin? Yeah, same. But hey, that's why Ledn exists. They're the global leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. We're talking over $9 billion issued since 2018 with a perfect record protecting client assets. And what makes a Ledn loan different, you ask? Well, with custody loans, your collateral stays put. They don't go degen and ship it out for yield. There are no credit checks. It funds in under 6 hours. No monthly payments. You can repay anytime with zero penalties. And for transparency grown-ups actually want, proof of reserves reports every 6 months verified by a top accounting firm. Bottom line is Ledn lets Bitcoin holders unlock liquidity without selling. And you can check it out over at ledn.io/RoxomTV. That's ledn.io/RoxomTV. All right, time to wrap things up with a little bullish, bearish, or BS. This is the part of the show where we recap today's top stories and see what they mean for Bitcoin moving on into the new week. Let's get started. First up, President Trump told 60 Minutes he has no idea who Changpeng Zhao is just weeks after pardoning him. Okay. Zhao, better known as CZ, is the billionaire founder of Binance and served 4 months in prison for enabling money laundering. Trump's sons have reportedly also have business ties to CZ's ventures, making his never heard of him claim a bit of a tough sell. I'm calling bullish on this one. I mean, when the president of the U.S. casually pardons crypto billionaires on national TV, it signals Bitcoin isn't going anywhere. Love him or hate him, Trump's unpredictable relationship with crypto keeps digital assets in mainstream headlines, and every soundbite like this plants Bitcoin deeper into the political conversation, and that's long-term bullish, even if it's chaotic in the short term. So I'm bullish on that first one. Next up, the U.S. and China announced a long-awaited trade detente, suspending tariffs and easing export controls. Markets reacted with polite applause and then quickly fell back asleep. Bitcoin barely moved, currently holding around 106,000 despite what should have been a risk-on moment. Ooh, I'm calling bearish on this one. I mean, global stability sounds nice, but Bitcoin, let's be real, it thrives in the chaos. When everything feels calm, money flows back into traditional assets instead of alternative hedges like good old BTC. Unless inflation spikes again or the next geopolitical drama hits, Bitcoin might be drifting sideways for a bit, so I'm calling bearish on that one. Last story, we have Game of Thrones author George R.R. Martin just won a major ruling that allowing his case against OpenAI to move forward. He claims the company trained ChatGPT on his books without his permission, copying his characters, plots, and even his cliffhangers. The court agreed there's enough evidence to call this a potential copyright violation, and the AI world is sweating bullets. Ooh, I'm calling BS on this one, all right? I mean, this might be headline gold. I'm here for it, but it's just market dust. AI lawsuits don't move Bitcoin, and no one's buying sats because George R.R. Martin hates Sam Altman. It's a fun sideshow for sure, but as far as Bitcoin's concerned, it's just background noise. So winter's coming, but not for Bitcoin. All right, so today's final score, 1 bullish, 1 bearish, 1 BS, which means today's market mood is a total load of bull, baby. I mean, Bitcoin's stuck in neutral, traders are yawning. Even world peace couldn't get us a rally. Sometimes the market just needs less diplomacy and more drama. Well, that's a wrap for today's show, boys and girls. As always, thanks so much for tuning in to our episode of the Blockchain Report. Remember, we're here on Mondays from 10 a.m. Pacific to 12 p.m. Pacific. But for the rest of the week, that's starting tomorrow through Friday, we're on from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific time, so you can catch us then. And if you haven't already, please just do me a small favor and make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to RoxomTV, the Blockchain Report, and Hank at RoxomTV if you haven't already. And I'll be back here tomorrow with the same shenanigans at the same time and the same place right here on the Blockchain Report. So until then, as always, stay sharp, stay safe, and always make sure to hodl on. See you mañana.